When you send out an email message to 6,500 people, and about a third of those who respond say you are nuts, another third say you're right on the mark, and another third say you're a hypocrite, I guess that's a good point for starting a conversation. And that conversation today is going to be about whether Leonard Boswell should be supported in the upcoming election. We're also going to talk with Tom Ahart. He's the interim superintendent with the Des Moines Public Schools. We've got a lot to talk about regarding education.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Najee's Mediterranean Grocery Store is a new business in the Drake neighborhood of Des Moines, featuring Middle Eastern products. Najee's offers a wide range of specialty foods at competitive prices, including hummus, falafel, tahini, pita bread, baklava, kosher, vegetarian foods, and Ethiopian injera bread. If you want to add unique ethnic flavors to your cooking, Najee's is the store for you. It's at 1133 42nd Street in Des Moines, just south of University Avenue. Stop by or call 255-3736 for more information. That's Najee's Mediterranean Grocery, 255-3736.
Hi, folks. It's Ed Fallon here. Proof Restaurant at 13th and Locust. You've probably been there for their award-winning, nationally recognized lunch specials. Well, now Proof is open Thursdays and Fridays for supper. And here's where the chefs really get creative. Let me tell you, they're like artists, okay? I've been there, and it is one of the best meals I have had in Des Moines. I've heard that from other people. You got to check it out. Proof for supper, Thursdays and Fridays, and also the second Saturday of the month. Do not assume you can get in. Make reservations. Contact Proof Restaurant online at proofrestaurant.com or 244-0655. That's 244-0655.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Fallon Forum. Later in the program, Tom Ahart, the interim superintendent of the Des Moines Public School District, will be joining me. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the race to the top. We're going to talk about the Chicago teachers strike and how that resolved. And we're kind of, dialogue a little bit about what we might expect from the Iowa legislature and the Branstad administration on a lot of the key points of education reform that have been making the rounds. Not so much this election cycle. Maybe a little bit has been out there, but not enough. So we'll talk about that later in the program. But, I've been thinking long and hard about the Leonard Boswell, Tom Latham race. And I wrote last night, I sent out a message to people saying my opinion is, my endorsement is not to vote for Boswell or Latham. And I've got lots of responses on that. I will share some of them with you. Now, my feeling is this, okay? And I'll tell you who I plan to vote for when I get to the end of this little introduction. But to me, and I've heard plenty of stories from people who have described circumstances with Boswell that are embarrassing, where there's a clear lack of integrity in some cases, where there's a lack of understanding of the issues, where there's a lack of connection to the person who is trying to get their point across with him. My own experience is this. When I decided to run against him, he sent an aide to offer me an $80,000 a year job as a bribe. Some people say I was crazy for not taking it, but I don't work that way, and I don't want somebody in Congress who works that way either. I was also told by one of Boswell's aides that he would be carried out of office. He was not going to retire. He was never going to step down, even though he'd said he would only serve, 3 terms? And this is a quote, he had become like a Gollum with the ring. I don't want somebody in Washington who's just there for the power. That's not my idea of an appropriate reason to become a public servant. Now, that 2008 campaign that I got into, it was brutal. It was I could not believe the kinds of attacks and lies and half-truths that were thrown at me. And I won't even get into those. I mean, we can if you like, but it was brutal. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. Nothing I'd ever seen up close. I've seen plenty of that in other people's campaigns. So yeah, there is a personal element to this. But beyond that, I asked the question: do you want somebody in Congress who doesn't have that basic level of decency to tell the truth on issues, and that will offer people bribes to get them out of the way? I think not. Anyway, my second reason is this. Of the Democrats who have represented Iowa in Congress over the past, 2, 3, maybe 4 decades, I cannot think of any who are as out of sync with Democratic priorities as Congressman Boswell. And yet, the party officials insist that we have to continue to support him because Latham is just a monster. He's so bad. He's so horrible. And again, yeah, I'm not supporting Latham. But the thing is, we keep being asked to support somebody who is so out of touch. And if we keep doing that, if we keep supporting a corporate Democrat over somebody who is truly in touch with the people, we're going to continue to get corporate Democrats. And I guarantee you that they're already working on the next generation of candidates to replace Boswell. It's probably a very short list, and I guarantee you the party elite are already trying to figure out how they continue to have somebody in there who is friendly to big business. So my third reason, and there's a common argument is made about third-party candidates. Do not throw your vote away for a third-party candidate because they will most certainly lose. Well, let's be consistent. Boswell's going to lose, okay? It is really hard to imagine a pathway to victory for Boswell. His district is not as friendly. He is being outspent 6-1. I mean, I got trounced. Well, I got 39%. Felt like a trouncing. And I was outspent only 3-1. He's being outspent 6-1 by Latham. I'm sorry, we have a word for candidates who get outspent 6-1. It's called loser. Okay, so... don't throw your vote away because of the same argument that people make about third-party candidates. Fourth, some will argue that Democrats and moderates need to support Boswell because we don't want a U.S. House that's controlled by right-wing crazies. Well, it already is controlled by the radical right wing. And, Paul Ryan's U.S. Congress, U.S. House is a very, very scary place. But even the most favorable projections, I've not seen a single projection that shows a path to victory for Democrats in the House. And again, having 217 Democrats in the House isn't enough. It doesn't matter. If you don't have the majority, it doesn't matter. I've had some people write to me and say, well, we need as many Democrats as we can get. No, you either need the majority or it doesn't matter. I mean, when I was in the Iowa House, if we were 49 or 36, and I was there during both of those things, it really didn't matter. It matters a little teeny tiny bit, but hardly at all. So, it's a majority you need. A majority's not going to happen. So, don't tell me that we need Boswell up there in order to, try to regain control. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. The battle is for the U.S. Senate, keeping control of the U.S. Senate in Democratic hands, and the big battle is for the presidency. And as I've said before, and will say again right now, I am supporting President Obama, despite being, quote, majestically disappointed, as my friend Arnie Arneson, another fellow recovering politician now turned talk show host, says. Okay, the final thing I want to say is conceding the seat to Latham, okay, which is I know what I'm advising we do, concede the seat to Latham. That opens the door for a strong progressive populist Democrat to win the primary in 2014 and challenge Latham from a position of strength. Voters don't want to see two people who are pretty much the same on the issues. That doesn't give them anything to feel confident or excited about. You get a good, solid, progressive opponent, somebody who's strong, who has roots, foundation, who has good backing, somebody who can do that, and I think that seat could go Democrat. Again, I know Latham has been a formidable opponent, but I think the best chance to beat him in this new district is from a candidate that truly identifies with the common good. And so I'm going to write in, drum roll please, Frank County. Now, to be really honest with you, and I'm always honest with you, but I'll be clear with you. I have not talked to Frank about this. I consider Frank a friend. He probably wants to throw stuff at me right now. I don't blame him because he's much more of a party person than I am. He's probably going to just disavow any efforts to get him on the ballot, get him written in as an independent candidate. And again, I understand he's not going to win. No writing candidate is going to win. No third-party candidate is going to win. I know that. We know that. Okay, so why do this? Well, because if enough people do that, it could create a sense of momentum that, people in this district are tired of a blue dog Democrat. They want somebody who's more in touch with the common good next time around. And to be clear, Frank has done a great job as mayor. He's got his priorities right, and I think he would make a fantastic candidate for Congress and a fantastic congressman. And another reason I suggest Frank is because that buzz is already out there. There are people already talking about this. Again, Frank will probably tell us all, please don't write me in. I did that once myself back when I got beat by Culver. I ended up supporting Culver because Culver, despite flaws, was decent. He did not lack the integrity the way Boswell does. So anyway, that's my take. And again, a lot of people have disagreed. The number to call is 244-0077. If you want to join the conversation, 244-0077. And if you wish to email me, you may do so at fallonforum@gmail.com. And many of you have. And again, some of you say I am right on the mark. Some of you say I am so embarrassingly wrong. Others say, Ed, you're a hypocrite. Let's start with that first. Okay. The hypocrite accusations say, quote, why do you support Obama? Fully agree with, Tom writes, I fully agree with your list about Boswell, and I have no intention to vote for him. I could write a similar but much longer list about Obama. So why the hell are you going to vote for him? Tom. Okay, here's why the hell I'm going to vote for Obama. Try to imagine a Romney-Ryan administration. Okay? Here are the choices between Obama and Romney. Romney brings along with him the Paul Ryan budget, which is, I think, has got to be the most draconian policy proposal I have ever seen in this country. It basically guts every safety net that has been established by the federal government. It continues. It lavishes even more tax breaks on special interests on the very wealthy. It doesn't even touch the military budget. It's hard to imagine why Ryan can even talk about this with a straight face. And again, maybe one reason among many that Romney continues to slide in the polls is because this is such a horrible, horrible proposal. So, again, I'm like others, very disappointed in President Obama on many issues, but he has done some good things, and he is a very, very clear and strong contrast to Romney and Ryan. Again, maybe not on some issues. They're both not. Neither are very good on things like the Patriot Act or the National Defense Authorization Act. And as bad as Obama has been on some foreign policy issues, certainly we would have preferred him not to expand the war in Afghanistan. Romney would be worse. So I make that argument, Tom. And I got more emails to share with you, but let's go to our phone lines if I can figure out how to turn the volume up. There we go. Folks, let's go to, who do we got, Maddie? Frank.
Ed.
Frank.
You was in New York. Did you fall on your head, or what's going on?
Did I fall on my head?
Yes.
I fall on my head every day. That's how I get out of bed. I roll out of bed and boom, I bang my head. That's how I wake up, Frank. I don't need an alarm clock that way.
Probably true. All summer, you took turns at trying to shove Carter and Gary Johnson and Ron Paul down our throats, and I told you at the time you had no intention of voting for him, and you denied that. And
I didn't know.
All of a sudden, you're proving me right that you're going to cast your ballot for old Barack Obama.
Okay, I can't quite remember the conversation you're talking about, but it was too early to say what would happen. Gary Johnson. I never indicated I would vote for Gary Johnson. I never indicated I would vote for Ron Paul. I thought it made sense to go to the Republican caucus because that's where the action was, and because it was hoped that enough people might nominate a candidate that at least was good on foreign policy and on Patriot Act type stuff.
The one thing I've complimented you on since I've talked to you on this program and other programs is you have a little fiscal sanity to you. You're not a total lunatic like I find most liberals to be.
Okay.
And you know that we are facing financial fiscal disaster in this country if some adults in the room don't get control of this spending.
Right, and that's what's called the Simpson-Bowles Commission. A decent, I mean, everybody could find something to disagree with in that plan.
Why would you vote for a man who put the Simpson-Bowles committee together and then wouldn't even look?
No, Frank, you are now speaking falsely. It was Paul Ryan and his ilk in the U.S. House that voted against the very commission's work that they helped create.
But why?
Obama was willing to move forward on it.
Oh, really?
Well, we don't know for sure because he never got a chance because Paul Ryan killed it. So, Paul Ryan is the hypocrite when it comes to deficit reduction. I mean, clearly, he was on the commission. He could have voted for it. He helped craft the language in that commission. Again, stuff in there everybody could oppose. But you got to do something. I agree.
Well, I was listening to Book TV last night on C-SPAN 2, 3, whatever.
You need to get out more.
And they had a guy on there who spent a year in the White House, Richard Miniter, who wrote a book about the name of the book is Leadership from Behind, basically implying everything Obama does is leading from behind, which I find to be true. But one of the statements he made in his commentary is that progressives are very irritated at Obama. Now, I think over the years, I've heard you describe yourself as a progressive.
Yeah. Which I distinguish from a classic liberal.
But yet you're going to cast your vote for this guy.
Yeah, because he is much better than the alternative. The alternative is very, very frightening to me.
What, somebody that wants to... Listen.
Frank, we're not going to agree on this one.
Say what you want about Romney, but I heard some little stories about the guy. He is frugal. He's tight in his own finances, and I believe that he would be tight with the country's finances. This is the type of...
Oh, yeah, he wants to continue the tax breaks for those earning $250,000 or more. He wants to continue oil subsidies. I mean, oil company subsidies. Frank, I don't know. I don't see how you can get off as calling Romney a responsible fiscal manager. I mean, over the years, despite their flaws, Democrats have actually done a better job at getting the country back on track fiscally than Republicans.
How? Who?
Clinton? Yeah.
Clinton
and Obama. But Clinton for sure.
Clinton he happened to ride over an economy that nobody could have run if they tried. It was during the dot-com bubble.
It helped, but I wouldn't say you can't give his administration some credit. And I don't give Clinton credit very lightly either. That's hard for me to do.
Well, how can you write in a third candidate for against Boswell? I know why you're not going to vote for Boswell.
I gave you my reasons. Yeah.
I know your reasons, but how can you write in a third candidate or consider writing in a third candidate and risk losing? Well, I don't think you're going to gain the House of Representatives anyway, but you wouldn't consider writing in a third candidate for the president.
I gave you my reasons there too, Frank.
Gary Carter, why not write in or Fred Carter? Why not write in your Gary Johnson or?
We don't have to write in Gary Johnson. He'll be on the ballot. And
Well, how about Ron Paul? You was singing the praises of Ron Paul all summer.
Oh, compared to the other Republicans, I was, and at least there was somebody talking about foreign policy in an intelligent way.
Our candidate for us.
No, I was trying to...
That would be like me going over and conservatives going over and switching parties to the Democrats so we can handpick the candidate we want to run again.
Okay, well, people have a right to vote in any primary they want in this state. And a lot of independents choose to go Democrat. Some choose to go Republican.
Well, we got a fiscal disaster in this country. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. That Social Security is going to run out of money in 2037, according to Erskine Bowles.
So Social Security needs some work, but I wouldn't say. Frank, I've got to move on. I've only got about a minute left. Thanks for the call.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I do want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk education with Tom Ahart today. But someone wrote they were critical of me for not mentioning issues, and I appreciate that because I am an issues guy, and I think it's the issues more than anything about Boswell that bother me. And yeah, I mean his support for war in the Mideast, for the Iraq War, for expanding the Afghanistan war, his support for the Patriot Act, for warrantless wiretapping. His support for Bush's definition of torture, including waterboarding. I mean, he voted against, when it comes to campaign finance, Boswell voted against the ban on soft money. I mean, that's hurting him right now. But, he's also voted in favor of the subsidies for oil companies, for gas companies. And this isn't just a short list. It just keeps going on and on. He voted for NAFTA type stuff, the fast track authority, free trade agreements. I mean, I've always wondered why labor unions get behind the guy when he's voting against, voting for things that clearly help decimate labor unions' ability to function viably in this country. He's voted for offshore oil drilling. He's been very outspoken about his support for greater use of coal. The one vote he took in favor of the Climate Change Act earlier this year, he ended up kind of retracting that later. He said he wished he hadn't voted for that. He's been a big supporter of hog confinements. Certainly when he was in the Iowa Senate, he was one of the main architects of the 1995 hog confinement bill. So, the list goes on and on and on and on. And we're never going to get to the point where the party leadership in the Democratic Party are going to start nominating, or they're not going to get behind progressives unless we start challenging the corporate-friendly candidates that they keep throwing at us. And in this case, again, with Boswell's chances of winning so slim, this is a really good opportunity to say, okay, enough is enough. We're going to move beyond this guy. Let's write in somebody that at least is a progressive. Maybe they don't want to run, but we can at least throw that name out there to let people know that, let the party know that we are unhappy with the options. So that's my take on it, folks. We can talk about it some more if you like. I certainly have got plenty more email to read through, and I'm going to try to respond to it all. I did get an interesting call today. Simon Conway contacted me this morning. Simon Conway wants me to come on his show. I said, sure, why not? Interesting. We finally, after been here for over a year, we finally found something we might agree on, but for probably very different reasons. Anyway, folks, I'll be back in a few minutes. Tom Ahart will be with us. I want to thank Physicians for Social Responsibility for helping to sponsor this program. Also, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. I want to thank all the businesses and individuals who helped make this program possible. We will be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Open Sesame is Des Moines' premier Lebanese cafe. This month, Open Sesame is offering an unbeatable lunch special on Monday and Tuesdays. Mention the Fallon Forum when you order anything on Open Sesame's delicious lunch menu and get the second item for half price. That's right, buy one, get one for half price. Open Sesame's pita wraps, salads, soup, and mouth-watering Mideastern specialties will have you and your dining partner coming back again and again. Open Sesame at 313 East Locust Street in Des Moines' historic East Village.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
Hi, folks. It's Ed Fallon here. Proof Restaurant at 13th and Locust. You've probably been there for their award-winning, nationally recognized lunch specials. Well, now Proof is open Thursdays and Fridays for supper. And here's where the chefs really get creative. Let me tell you, they're like artists, okay? I've been there, and it is one of the best meals I have had in Des Moines. I've heard that from other people. You got to check it out. Proof for supper, Thursdays and Fridays, and also the second Saturday of the month. Do not assume you can get in. Make reservations. Contact Proof Restaurant online at proofrestaurant.com or 244-0655. That's 244-0655.
Well, hi, I'm Rob Spearman. I'm a broker-owner of RE/MAX Real Estate Concepts in Des Moines, Iowa. Give us a call if you're looking at buying or selling a home, or if you're having trouble on your mortgage payments or looking to purchase foreclosures. We have the agents to help you, experienced, outstanding agents. Our office number is 515-276-2872. Or if you'd like to look at homes, go to our website, homeconnectusa.com.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. And he said not only would he like to be a sponsor, but he would offer a $100 tithe for every customer that came and bought a car from him directly to the church of your choice. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
There is hope. Visit groundwire.net and chat now with a live coach for answers.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey folks, welcome back. That's Mr. Baber's Neighbors. A quick look ahead. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Mid-American Energy's selection of 2 lucky counties, the winners of the possible nuclear power plant site, Fremont down in southwest Iowa, and Muscatine County on the east side of the state. Congratulations, folks. You may have a nuclear power plant coming your way. Actually, there's plenty of reasons why that might not be happening. Also, I want to talk more about the 47% of the country that Mitt Romney thinks are freeloaders. We're going to give out a 47%er award frequently throughout the rest of the month of October. Wednesday, my pal Arnie Arneson is going to join us. Arnie is a former politician turned talk show host from New Hampshire, and we'll talk about Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan and various things like that. So on Thursday, very honored to have Colleen Rowley on the program with me. She's a former FBI agent, whistleblower. She ran for Congress in Minnesota, didn't win, but she was also named the Time Person of the Year in 2002 because of her work relevant to 9/11. Friday, Dr. Charles Goldman is back with me, and we are going to discuss capital gains, the minimum wage, and other issues that Mitt Romney wants to avoid like the plague. But right now, Tom Ahart is with me. Tom is the interim superintendent of the Des Moines Public Schools. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
And where to start? The big news in education this last week has been the teachers' strike in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Which none of us knew how it was going to turn out. It looks like it's come out, it almost looks like a win-win situation, but the teachers certainly feel good about it.
Yeah, it does look like a win-win situation. I think the teachers got most of what they were looking for, although something that has been overlooked, I think, quite a bit that we do a really good job with in Iowa, I think, is they had lots of concerns just about working conditions, let alone pay.
What working conditions?
Buildings that were falling apart, not air conditioned, temperatures reaching upwards of 100 degrees, and just some things that most professionals wouldn't tolerate, but in education it seems to be acceptable.
Yeah, how do you teach, let alone learn in 100-degree heat?
Right. You look at Maslow's hierarchy, and we seem to forget that bottom level sometimes in education and expect to go right to the top.
So, it was interesting to me that the city was so involved in that debate, because we have more of my impression is we have more of a separation between municipal government and school district management.
Yeah, absolutely. In Indiana and Illinois and some other places, there's really a direct tie. So Rahm Emanuel is really essentially the CEO
he's the Tom
the
Ahart,
president,
the Tom Ahart of the Chicago School District.
Yeah, well, he's sort of. They appoint a CEO, but he's the boss of the CEO, so he has a lot more decision-making authority than any one person has in the Iowa system, where we have a board of 7 in Des Moines, and other districts have at least 5, sometimes 7, sometimes more.
Now, I kind of like our system better, but my understanding in Chicago, one reason this strike did not go on forever and that was resolved with some concessions toward the teachers was because of how it affected the entire city.
I think you're right. Yeah, the school district then becomes one big dynamic in the whole municipal structure.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So what do you think? What's the takeaway in terms of how are we smarter from this experience? What do we know that we can take away with this?
Well, that's a great question. I think one of the things that Des Moines is currently applying for a Race to the Top application. There are several states that have that are Race to the Top states, as they call them, and this round of grants are available to individual districts. So, for instance, the Iowa legislature didn't make some moves that they needed to make for us to qualify as a Race to the Top state, but we can apply as a district this time around. And one of the things that gets to that Chicago teacher strike that we have to have in our Race to the Top application is teacher evaluations and principal evaluations that are tied to student performance. Lots of opinions about that.
Teachers' unions have tended to oppose that.
Well, they have tended to oppose it. We passed an alternative contract on our own without Race to the Top guidance this past spring with our Teachers Association, but we were very careful about what student growth looks like as it relates to a teacher evaluation, and something that I think we've sort of fallen down on in education, starting with the No Child Left Behind reauthorization of the ESEA legislation, is that it's easy to say. It makes common sense on the face of it that, yes, if I'm doing a good job as a teacher, my students will be growing. But what we have failed to do as a system is put into place valid and reliable measures that take a student where they're at when a teacher gets that student and then measures the growth.
There are plenty of attempts to measure, but I think the operative word in what you just said was valid and reliable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I mean, and that you would agree with the teachers' union's position that some of these standards, especially No Child Left Behind, are not valid, not reliable, that are punitive and costly, and
absolutely.
Yeah. So I know that. I know that No Child Left Behind was a bipartisan initiative. Mm-hmm. As much as I liked Ted Kennedy, that was one thing he did that I was not happy about.
I agreed.
I haven't been following whether there is any bipartisan initiative in Washington, in the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate, to, either repeal it or somehow change it so that it is more friendly to, the viewpoints of the teachers who are on the front lines trying to do the work.
I was under the impression that bipartisan initiatives were no longer allowed in Congress.
Well, that certainly would apply to the U.S. House. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Well,
yeah, so in other words, nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. We're long overdue for reauthorization of ESEA, and that's just been.
Tell us what is the acronym?
Elementary and Secondary Education Act,
okay. Yeah.
Which has been in place for decades, and every time they reauthorize it, it has a new moniker. Under Bush, it was No Child Left Behind, and the Obama administration, for better or worse, has kind of gone off in their own direction because the legislation hasn't been renewed. So we're sort of operating under two sets of rules right now.
And it's under the Obama administration's direction that the Race to the Top is now managed.
Right.
And how would you characterize what Obama is doing in education relevant to his successors?
I would say that he is, instead of a one-size-fits-all...
Predecessors. Is it successors? Predecessors, sorry.
I followed you. I think the primary differences are that instead of creating a one-size-fits-all, he is incentivizing innovation to a degree. However, there still are some quite a bit of flexibility for states to figure out what that means, and states tend to make a one-size-fits-all for their state.
Well, in the case of Iowa, the state government chose to not participate.
Right.
And was that? I mean, I can't remember now. Did the Iowa House basically block any initiative? I mean, I thought I remember hearing there was some interest in moving forward.
Well, there was
the Senate
some,
and even Branstad.
There was some interest in moving forward, although I don't know. I can't really characterize it accurately one way or the other because I'm not informed enough about the machinations of it all, but I think it didn't rise. Becoming eligible as a Race to the Top state just didn't rise to the priority level that it needed to for the right actions to be taken.
Well, it's funny to me that it didn't because there's money involved.
There's a tremendous amount of money involved.
And usually when there's money involved, legislators are just there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
I mean, I remember if it's money or jobs, they fall all over themselves trying to get it done. I remember when there was a Wells Blue Bunny up in northwest Iowa threatened to move out of the state. There wasn't that many jobs, but the legislature pretty much ground to a halt on every other issue for a week and spent the entire week coming up with an incentive package for Wells Blue Bunny. So you would think that there would be more interest. I mean, especially now they've missed the deadline, right?
Right.
So that's puzzling to me. I mean,
well, but that's been the case for a while in education, I would argue. I've been back in the state for, I don't know, 15 or 16 years, and about a dozen years ago or so, it was soon after No Child Left Behind was passed. There was money available for every state to help support charter schools,
right.
And at the time, Iowa had no charter school legislation, and so they weren't eligible for the funding.
Yeah.
I was on a committee that helped craft some legislation, and we had to water it down considerably in order to get the legislature to pass it, so that Iowa could reap those funds. But they weren't all over it until there was some direct pressure.
And so, despite the state legislature's inability to move or unwillingness to move forward on creating the structure to accommodate the federal program, the Obama administration and Congress, structured this in such a way that individual school districts can move forward, and that's what you're doing.
That's what we're doing in
Des Moines.
Des Moines. Yeah, I believe there's going to be. I think at last count there were 3 districts in Iowa that were districts or consortia that were planning to apply.
3 out of 300.
3 out of 300 plus.
Wow, that's not many.
It's not many.
So
no.
Is it because the application process is tedious, or what?
It is an arduous process, I will tell you.
So you're working till 1 every morning filling out paperwork?
Well, not 1 every morning, but
once in a while.
Once in a while. It's very, very extensive.
And I've heard plenty of criticism of Race to the Top, and perhaps and maybe you could summarize. I'm sure you've heard more than I have. What would you summarize as the concerns about Race to the Top?
Well, I think the concerns, the key concerns that I think you'd hear educators complain about across the country is, one, it really does target the money. So you take the pool of money that used to be fairly evenly distributed, and it's really targeted. So it's competitive I think to incite some innovation.
And who's making the decision on who gets the money?
Well, the USDE is making that determination.
How big of a pool of money are we talking about?
Well, we can apply for, for instance, they have a pool of money for these district applications, and we don't know, this is nationwide, so I don't know how many school districts across the nation are applying, because there's not a pool tied directly to Iowa. None of us are automatically going to be given money.
Everybody's in the same pool.
But with the population that we're going to serve with our grant, if we're successful, that's $30 million.
Okay.
Well, that's $30 million that if it comes to Des Moines, it comes to Des Moines and it doesn't go somewhere else.
Yeah, well, it's ironic. I mean, you're actually, even though it may benefit kids if more states would get involved, it benefits the Des Moines district, that other states and even the Iowa as a whole is not getting involved.
True.
So kind of an awkward position to be in.
It is an awkward position to be in. But this is the rules that we're playing with this year.
Right.
So we're going to play by those rules in the interest of the students of Des Moines.
So what's the timeline on accomplishing the grant?
We have to have pretty much a final draft ready by October 15th, because we need community partners to review it and sign off on it. Mayor County, for instance, will have to sign off on it.
Yeah, that'll help us race for Congress.
There you go.
Sorry, Frank. You can smack me around later if you want, but I think you'd do a heck of a job in Congress.
I wouldn't argue with that, Frank. By the end of the month, we'll have it. By the end of October, we have to have it submitted to the USDE, and then hopefully we'll find out something prior to New Year's.
Well, really, that quick?
Yeah, because the granting period actually starts January.
Wow. So the federal government might actually move fast on something?
Well, they hold us pretty strictly to deadlines. They don't necessarily always follow them.
Right. That's what I've come to respect and admire in our federal government. Works for you, not so much for me.
Right.
So, say you get the grant, $30 million, Des Moines School District. What specifically can we see in terms of results and programs?
Well, what I'm anchoring the whole writing of this grant on is that all of our students will be proficient in algebra prior to ending their 8th grade year. And that's going to help support our work in back mapping, doing some development, teacher development, professional development, some curriculum modification, and mostly create some structure so that we can more personalize the education that each of our students receive.
Now, why algebra? That seems fairly random. Why not bassoon playing?
Not random. There's lots of evidence, and I didn't bring research with me, but there's a ton of evidence that says if we can get students past basic algebra, that's really a gateway to being able to be successful in all sorts of advanced science and math courses.
Do you even really need algebra anymore with calculators?
Yes.
Okay. I've been smacked down.
Yes, you do. Just the conceptual thinking is you need that you need to understand conceptually how algebra works in order for you to successfully use a calculator in some advanced applications.
We finally hit on a dispute. I love disputes with my guests. We're going to settle this dispute by asking my bike. My bike is actually very smart. Mm-hmm. Has not gone through the public school system, but I'm curious as to whether my bike supports making algebra a priority or not.
You need algebra to study physics, chemistry. You do need algebra to use a calculator. Mm-hmm. Really.
Well, now, what is a bike doing with a calculator?
Your taxes.
You're doing my taxes?
Sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to go with your answer then, Tom.
Okay.
All right. And we're also going to go to a break, folks. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. I want to talk about the upcoming legislative session. Mm-hmm. Again, as you said, they kind of dropped the ball on the race to the top. Mm-hmm. What do we expect from the Department of Education here in Iowa, the Branstad administration, and the Iowa House and Senate in the upcoming session? We'll be back in a few minutes on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
Hi, folks. Ed Fallon here. When it is time to entertain, think of Gateway Market. Let them handle the details. Gateway offers a wide variety of stress-free options like cut-to-order cheese and charcuterie. There's a delicious olive bar and a wide variety of chef-prepared dips and spreads. Or let the catering team take care of the entire event, right down to the wine and beer pairings. The expert floral designers can even customize the perfect centerpieces. So stop by or visit Gateway Market for more information. Gateway is at Woodland and ML King in downtown Des Moines. Good food, great entertaining.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
With warm weather finally here, it's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
Wow, some wedding.
Yeah, I've never seen a bride in coveralls.
Right, and skipping down the aisle to accordion music.
Not to mention the reception. That wedding cake was a freaking fruit cake.
It's your wedding. Don't leave anything to chance. Diana's Wedding Cakes. Using only the finest, freshest ingredients with free on-time delivery and setup. Choose one of Diana's custom designs or create your own. Call Diana's Wedding Cakes, 641-275-9279. That's 641-275-9279.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Pumptown. A great young group.
I like the
They're not
harmonica.
parts of the Des Moines Public School, but they went to school somewhere in Iowa. Fantastic group. Folks, I want to thank all of our sponsors, businesses, individuals, organizations. I want to thank one of our new sponsors, Host. Have you been to Host?
I haven't.
You haven't. You need to go. Host is a great restaurant at 13th and Locust. That's one of the best corners in Des Moines. Host serves a fantastic lunch menu. Now, I think it's 11 to 2. And a lot of local food, a ton of stuff from local farms. And you can check out their menu online, host. I think it's host.com. But again, check it out. They're very creative, very, very clever. And everything I've had is significant portions. I go away feeling very full, very satisfied. And you should check them out. 13th and Locust, Host. Back to our conversation. Tom Ahart is with me. He's the interim superintendent of the Des Moines Public Schools. We've been talking education, surprise, surprise, and we're going to continue on that theme. I want to, maybe it's a little bit hard to say what we might expect from the State House next year because the election is still before us.
Yeah, very difficult.
It's pretty sure that the House is going to remain Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be an almost insurmountable change for 60-40. I mean, that's not going to shift.
No.
The Senate could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think let's look at both scenarios. I mean, what do we see if the Senate is Republican and the House is Republican and we have Governor Branstad? What is that? What kind of environment is that going to be? I mean, I know you're not partisan.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're going to do what you've got to do for our kids, for our schools, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe instead of starting with that question, just what are the issues that you want to see addressed at the State House next year?
Well, that's a great question. I want the. I made this suggestion at the town hall meeting that the governor just had in West Des Moines a couple of weeks ago. He has, I think, 6 different task forces looking at various education issues with representatives, school and public representatives from around the state sitting on each of those boards. I suggested one more task force, and Linda Fandel said she might give me a call on this. I have not heard from her yet, but I suggested that they look at put a task force together to look at Chapter 12, which is the Iowa Code that basically governs K-12 education, school improvement, and so forth, and put a task force together to comb through that code and discard all of the elements that are now getting in our way. They've built on this and built on it and built on it, and every legislature adds new elements to it.
Yeah,
but they never take anything out.
When I was a state legislator, the code went from 4 volumes to 5 volumes. And I voted against most of the additions, but
right. But we never go back and correct things that maybe didn't work, that maybe were well intended, and we certainly continue to add more and more extraneous hoop jumping that doesn't serve kids well.
I'm laughing a little bit here because this is not a trick chair you're sitting in, but
I keep
you
sinking.
continue to decline in stature, and our producer's laughing at you. My bike is laughing at you. I will give you a second to try to adjust that seat and get back to your former stature if you want.
Let's see.
Bike, are you doing some mischief on this?
Here we go.
Sometimes I like to
That's a
give
great
that chair
trick.
to guests just so that they can sink and they don't know what's going on.
Oh, you're a little. See, my bike can be troublesome anyway. All right, welcome back to your former stature. So anyway, that sounds like good code cleanup. That even Republicans and Democrats alike should think that would be a good plan. Mm-hmm. Would there be anything controversial in that might cause it to logjam?
Well, for some reason, here I go again. This must be a legislatively
It
governed
wasn't doing
chair.
it the first segment. I don't know what's wrong.
For some reason, they don't like to take things away. It seems.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it would. There's probably lots of areas of Iowa code where some cleanup would be a good idea.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I would love it if they would consider home rule and as opposed to Dillon's rule, but I'm sure we don't stand a chance of that happening.
What's the difference between those two?
Well, right now we schools operate under Dillon's rule. In other words, we can do whatever Iowa law expressly gives us permission to do, but we cannot do something that we're not given express permission to do, even if it's not illegal.
Yeah.
And
that's the opposite for cities and counties.
It's the opposite for cities and counties.
Right. We just don't trust teachers and school districts as much as we do city councils and boards of supervisors, I guess.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
All right. So that probably won't happen.
Likely not.
It's probably worth a conversation, though.
Well, I think it is worth a conversation.
Yeah.
I think it is worth a conversation because, and that's why I'm one of the reasons why I'm suggesting we look at Chapter 12. If they start looking at that, maybe they'll start to see, maybe we're not doing such a great job. It's a fast-changing world, and we're, as educators, we are trying to move quickly, too, to respond to the fast-pacing world, but the code that we're governed by certainly doesn't indicate that we can.
So what about, charter schools was an issue last year, and there's a bunch of controversy around that, both locally and statewide. Some see the charter school initiative as a way to begin to erode the base of support for public education. I don't know what's likely to come up. Is your district or the Urban Education Network or even the State Association of School Boards planning any action,
No,
effort on
that doesn't rise to our top. Allowable growth always is kind of the top of the agenda. Charter schools, though, that's an interesting conversation in Iowa. The charter language in Iowa, if you showed it to states that are more progressive in the charter movement, they wouldn't recognize, if you took the word charter out, they would never identify our legislation as supporting charter schools. So interestingly, the charter school that was in operation for a year and a half or so in Des Moines, there was very little they were doing there that we couldn't do without a charter. And in fact, we probably have some schools in Des Moines currently existing that more resemble a charter school that you might see in Chicago or
but
Los
that are
Angeles.
actually part of the fully part of the public school district itself.
That aren't given any special dispensation.
So, all right, another thing has been the race to the top. That the legislature decided not to bring Iowa into that program. As you said earlier, you're moving forward in the Des Moines district on a grant yourself. To me, it looks like it puts you in an interesting position because philosophically, you'd like to see the state of Iowa, the Iowa legislature, the governor, support enrolling in that program. But it also means there might be less money for the Des Moines School District if you do.
Well, if we're successful in this district race to the top application, certainly that would be the case.
There'll be more competition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you do on that? Just stay out of it.
I just stay out of it and take care of my own backyard. Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't, but the Des Moines district wouldn't register in opposition to the state enrolling in the program.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But it isn't politics. They say it creates interesting bedfellows. It also creates interesting conundrums.
Yeah, it does.
Quandaries
for sure, it does. I do hope, though, that as this debate about tying principal and teacher evaluations to student performance continues, that we do get down to brass tacks and talk about what it means to have a good, valid, and reliable testing system.
Yeah.
And you can't just take Iowa tests and slap that in there and say that's how we're going to measure.
Yeah.
The test wasn't designed to do that. It doesn't give us the information we need to do that. But under No Child Left Behind, Iowa has been limping along with this unfair measure that eventually is going to show all of us as failing, because you can't measure growth with a norm-referenced test, and that's exactly the application that the state is using.
So a quick question about allowable growth. And just so folks know, allowable growth is the level of funding that the legislature determines is appropriate for K through 12 school districts to increase by. And some say, well, in a tight budget, you don't want it to increase at all, do you? Well, if you want the school districts to keep pace with inflation, if you want to make sure they at least have enough money to cover the additional costs of gas for buses, books, supplies, health care for teachers and other staff, you want some increase in allowable growth. Usually the bare minimum is considered to be 2 to 3%. Mm-hmm. I remember there was one period when I was in where it was frozen, and Vilsack and I were on the same page. When he was governor, we were on the same page wanting to get it to 6%. There weren't a lot of people who wanted to do that, but it was clear that was what was needed to get schools back to where they had been. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you're seeing all sorts of cuts that don't just go to the fat, they go to the meat of the programs.
Right. So,
where do you think folks are going to come down in terms of proposing a reasonable level of allowable growth? What are we looking at?
Well, I think that if we got to 2%.
Yeah, got to 2%. That's kind of sad that we have to say it that way.
But that's the reality. I too remember when we were trying to push for 6% allowable growth. Mm-hmm. And we've had some significant across the board cuts in the last 5 years. A mid-year 1.5% across the board cut, which in essence, when you're halfway through a fiscal year, looks more like a 3% cut. And we had a 10% cut, I think, the following year, and we're still trying to recover from that. Yeah. Some degree of certainty, and actually, no matter what they approve, I hope they approve it early. Because we actually are required by law to submit a comprehensive budget in the last several years prior to what we even knew allowable growth was. And so the position that puts a district like Des Moines in, because of our size, we actually have to pink slip a bunch of teachers because we have to assume we're not getting anything. And then you end up calling them back, and in the meantime you lose some good talent to other districts, and makes it uncertain and uncomfortable for everybody.
Yeah. Well, there almost certainly will be some haggling over it, because you've got the Iowa Senate that will probably go along with a higher level of allowable growth. You got the House that historically, under Republican control, has gone for as little an increase as possible. Again, even often below the level of inflation.
Right.
And you got Governor Branstad again with Linda Fandel and others who I'm not quite sure where they'll fall down.
It's very difficult to tell. Most of what they're talking right now seems to be in the hands of these task force groups. So, and few of them have made any concrete recommendations yet. So it'll be very interesting to see. It's great to see renewed interest. I want to give the Branstad administration credit for that. Some renewed interest in education, but the proof will be in the pudding.
Okay, Matty, pull the plug. I just had a guest that said something nice about Governor Branstad. Sorry. No, I'm kidding. No, we're giving credit where credit's due. This is an issue where he has not been as bad as he has been on some other issues. That's my words, not yours. Anyway, right. So what do you say, in the few minutes we have remaining here, what do you say to folks who, the line you hear from some on the right, I've heard this on talk shows locally here, where our schools are just, and this is almost a quote, our schools are just rat-infested, pagan, dens of vice. I've heard basically that said, almost that very language, by folks who think our school system is such a failure that it needs to be privatized or totally redone, or we need to be sending our kids to homeschooling our kids, or sending them to some private schools. What do you say to folks who describe our public school system as an abject failure?
That they're dead wrong. Here's the analogy that I use with people, and unfortunately, education is a complex enterprise, and it's difficult to have that 10-second elevator speech that everybody can believe and actually covers the story like you want it to. But I think if you take any student, like Des Moines Public Schools, I really think if you took a student and matched that student's demographics with a student in any other district, that you will find, including private schools, that they will be served as well or better in Des Moines Public Schools. And we have tremendous evidence. If you look at the number of students that we have taking AP exams, the number of students taking AP exams that pass the AP exam, we're going to have probably all 5 of our comprehensive schools in the top 50 in the nation. Well, we have over 5,000 students in our district that are English language learners. Speaking over 100 different languages. Some of them entering our school system
100.
Yes,
Wow.
we can't even report all of them. The state
Yeah.
doesn't have a way for us to
Wow.
report each of our languages. But that's a district. That's enough students to be bigger than the Ames Public Schools.
Oh, yeah.
But and if you look at the growth that those students make, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think that if whoever has that opinion, if they make any reasonable comparison with any other system and how the number of kids we serve, the scope and breadth of the work that we're asked to do with those kids, and the efficiency with which we do it, I just can't see that you can make a legitimate argument that it's a failure.
It seems to me that the primary foundation, how do I say this? The folks who are maligning our school system, who think it's rat-infested pagan traps or whatever, pagan rat-infested, I can't remember how a local talk show host put it, but it was something along those lines. Those folks tend to come at the discussion from a position of religious faith. They don't like the fact that schools aren't biblically oriented, which I mean, it's a secular. You got to have that disconnection. Yeah, I mean, I went to 12 years of Catholic school growing up. That was my dad's choice. You know, I feel my kids got a better education than I did in the public school system. But it seems to me that folks who are against the public school system either don't like it because of their religion, or they'd like to privatize it because there's about $600 billion worth of money to make. If you look at the money spent nationally on education, $600 billion. There are corporations drooling to get their hands on that money.
I'm sure there are.
Tom, thanks so much for joining
You
us.
bet.
Tom Ahart, folks, the interim superintendent of the Des Moines Public Schools. Not a small job to manage these days, especially with all the changes happening and the
No, it's not.
legislature coming down. And
Yeah.
who knows what will happen in Washington, D.C. after the election. Good luck, Tom.
Thanks for having
We'll have
me,
you
Ed.
back on sometime. I always enjoy talking with you, folks.
Great.
Tomorrow we're going to talk about nuclear power because Mid-American has finally revealed to us where they'd like to build a couple power plants, or at least one, either in Fremont County or Muscatine County. We've also got some conversation to have about Mitt Romney, Ann Romney, and how out of touch they seem to be with the 47% of the electorate that are, well, schleps, according to Romney. We'll be back then, folks. But in the meantime, stay tuned for Bradshaw. He'll be joining you in just about 25 minutes here on Wow. I can't believe I just said that. Somebody smack me. Would you smack me, please? Thank you. On Webcast One Live, and I want to thank our producer, Maddie Arrington. We'll be back tomorrow on the Fallon Forum. Bradshaw next.